CSI. Miami wasn't just a TV phenomenon. Behind every case and every line of dialogue lived actors carrying wounds the audience never saw. 20 years later, their real stories reveal a world far darker, lonelier, and more fragile than any crime scene on screen. David Caruso as Horatio Kane. David Caruso was born on January 7, 1956, in Forest Hills, Queens, New York. At 46 years old, he stepped into the iconic role of Lieutenant Horatio Kane in CSI Miami, becoming the calm, sunglasses-lifting leader whose quiet intensity defined the entire show. Before Miami, Caruso was known for his earlier success on NYPD Blue, but it was Horatio, the stoic protector with a tragic past, that turned him into a global television legend. But behind that cool, unbreakable persona, Caruso's real life was far more fragile. After leaving NYPD Blue in 1994, due to conflicts over salary and creative control, his career nearly collapsed. Films like Kiss of Death, 1995, and Jade, 1995, performed poorly, turning him into a Hollywood cautionary tale overnight. Financial stress, industry backlash, and growing tension in his personal life made the late 1990s a period of emotional exhaustion. His marriages, first to Sherry Mogans, then to actress Rachel Tickerton, also ended in divorce, leaving behind heartbreak and custody battles that drained him further. When CSI Miami arrived, it wasn't just a job. It was a second chance he desperately needed. With Miami's massive success, Caruso became one of the highest-paid actors on television, earning tens of millions across 10 seasons. Yet the spotlight brought new pressure. His intense work ethic, clashes with producers, and the isolation of fame began taking a toll. Reports of on-set conflicts, long hours, and emotional burnout followed him through the 2000s. When the series ended in 2012, Caruso, who had not acted in any other major film or show during those years, simply walked away. No farewell tour, no new projects, just silence. As of 2025, David Caruso is 69 years old. He lives a quiet, secluded life in California, far removed from the industry that once made him a star. Kim Delaney as Megan Donner. Kim Delaney was born on November 29, 1961, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was 40 years old when she stepped into CSI, Miami, 2002, as Megan Donner, the brilliant but emotionally fractured DNA specialist haunted by the death of her husband. On screen, she radiated intelligence and control. Off-screen, her life was spiraling into something far less steady. Long before Miami, Delaney had already lived through some of the darkest storms Hollywood could unleash. Her early fame from NYPD Blue came with a brutal price. The overwhelming pressure of stardom fueled a growing dependence on alcohol. By the late 1990s, her drinking became uncontrollable, straining friendships and destroying relationships. She married and divorced twice, first to actor Charles Grant, then to Joe Cortese, both unions collapsing under the weight of late-night arguments, emotional volatility, and the silent war she fought within herself. Even as she won an Emmy in 1997, she later admitted she was barely holding her life together. When she joined CSI Miami, producers hoped her comeback would be triumphant. Instead, the cracks widened. Delaney struggled to manage the intense shooting schedule, and her private battles began spilling onto the set. Rumors circulated of her arriving late, forgetting lines, and withdrawing emotionally from castmates. The pressure became unbearable. After just 10 episodes, she exited the show abruptly, not because the character was written out, but because Kim was fighting demons no script could rewrite. The downward spiral didn't stop there. In 2002, she lost custody of her son due to concerns about her drinking. In 2011, she delivered a rambling, incoherent speech at a military gala, visibly intoxicated, creating a public spectacle that went viral and pushed her deeper into shame. It was the kind of moment that forces a person to choose: collapse completely or rebuild from the ashes. Through rehab, therapy, and long periods of silence away from Hollywood, she fought for a second chance at life. Slowly, she returned with roles in Army Wives and General Hospital, no longer chasing fame but seeking stability. Her performances carried a new depth, the kind that only comes from someone who has survived herself. Today, Kim Delaney is 63 years old in 2025. She works occasionally, appearing in shows like General Hospital and small TV movies, choosing projects that allow her peace rather than pressure. Jonathan Togo as Ryan Wolf. Born on August 25, 1977 in Rockland, Massachusetts, Jonathan Togo was 27 years old when he joined CSI Miami, 2004, as Ryan Wolf, the meticulous, obsessive crime scene investigator whose hunger for perfection often pushed him to the edge. On screen, Wolf was sharp, disciplined, and tightly wound. Off-screen, Togo's life would soon slip into a very different kind of tension, one that no scriptwriter could fix. As CSI Miami climbed to global fame, Togo became a rising star almost overnight. The sudden spotlight brought attention, opportunity, and a level of pressure he had never known. While his career grew steadier with every season, his personal life became increasingly unstable. Behind the scenes, friends described him as anxious, overwhelmed, and struggling silently to maintain the polished persona fans expected. The fracture between who he played and who he was deepened with time. Then came the scandal that changed everything. In December 2009, Togo was arrested on suspicion of domestic violence after an altercation with his girlfriend, a headline that exploded across entertainment news and shattered his clean-cut image. Though the charge was later reduced and he completed a counseling program, the damage to his reputation was immediate and brutal. Casting calls slowed, public trust dissolved. For a young actor whose career depended on relatability and charm, this was a wound far deeper than any storyline on television. After CSI Miami ended, Togo tried to rebuild. He focused on smaller projects, independent films, and writing, hoping to restore his footing in an industry that rarely forgets, and almost never forgives, a public fall from grace. Over time, he found stability through creative work and fatherhood, redirecting his energy into more grounded private pursuits far from the glare of mainstream Hollywood. As of 2025, Jonathan Togo is 48 years old. He continues to act occasionally, often in low-profile television and streaming projects, while maintaining a quiet life centered around his family. His story no longer resembles the precise, spotless world of Ryan Wolf. It is messier, humbler, and marked by someone who learned the hard way how quickly fame can disappear and how slowly self-repair begins. Eddie Cibrian as Jesse Cardoza. Eddie Cibrian, born on June 16, 1973 in Burbank, California. He was 37 years old when he joined CSI Miami, 2010, as Jesse Cardoza, the seasoned, streetwise investigator returning to the Miami lab after years away. His character brought intensity and emotional depth to the show's later seasons. But during that same period, Cibrian's personal life was exploding into one of the biggest scandals Hollywood had seen in years. Before joining the cast, Cibrian had built a solid resume with roles in Third Watch, Sunset Beach, and Ugly Betty. He had also built what looked like a stable family life with model Brandi Glanville, whom he married in 2001 and welcomed 2 sons with. But in 2009, everything shattered. While filming Northern Lights, Cibrian began an affair with Grammy-winning country star LeAnn Rimes, who was also married at the time. Tabloids devoured every detail. Brandi Glanville's heartbreak dominated headlines, and Cibrian found himself cast not as a rising star but as a villain in a real-life soap opera. The fallout was brutal. His marriage collapsed in a bitter, highly publicized divorce marked by accusations, leaked emails, and screaming matches captured by paparazzi. His image, once clean, polished, and dependable, was replaced by a narrative of betrayal and controversy. Hollywood, always wary of off-screen baggage, quietly stepped back. Even after he and LeAnn Rimes married in 2011, the scandal followed him everywhere. Projects slowed, leading roles disappeared, and he found himself fighting to salvage a career that had seemed so secure just a few years earlier. Cibrian eventually shifted toward smaller television movies and short-lived series, doing steady but far quieter work. Public interest in the scandal faded, but its impact on his trajectory never fully disappeared. While Rimes rebuilt her brand through music and reality TV, Cibrian worked deliberately in the background, choosing stability over spectacle. In 2025, Eddie Cibrian is 52 years old. He continues to act in select television roles, balancing work with family life in a far calmer chapter than the one that nearly destroyed his reputation. Elizabeth Berkley as Julia Winston. Elizabeth Berkley was born on July 28, 1972, in Farmington Hills, Michigan. She was 34 years old when she appeared in CSI, Miami as Julia Winston, the elegant, troubled ex-wife of Horatio Caine, whose presence always carried the quiet tension of a life unraveling beneath polished surfaces. On screen, she moved with restraint and mystery. Off-screen, she carried scars far older than her time in Miami. Long before she stepped into Julia's complicated world, Berkley had lived through one of Hollywood's most brutal public takedowns. Fresh off the success of Saved by the Bell, she gambled everything on Showgirls, 1995, the film she believed would launch her into serious acting. Instead, it became one of the most notorious flops of the decade, mocked by critics, rejected by audiences, and weaponized against her career. While others walked away untouched, Berkley became the face of its failure. Agents stopped calling. She wasn't just out of work. She was blacklisted, punished for a movie in which she'd risked everything. The rejection hit hard. Berkley later described the years after Showgirls as a kind of exile, a period marked by humiliation, self-doubt, and the quiet ache of being erased by the very industry she once dreamed of conquering. But she refused to disappear. She rebuilt slowly through stage work, independent films, and guest appearances, forcing Hollywood to see her talent beyond one catastrophic role. Landing Julia Winston on CSI, Miami was more than a job. It was proof that she could still break through the walls erected around her. Even so, the past lingered. Berkley carried the weight of Showgirls into every audition room, a shadow that reminded her how fame could twist from blessing to curse in a single weekend. Yet instead of letting the industry's cruelty define her, she redirected her pain. She became an advocate for young women, launching the Ask Elizabeth mentorship program and writing a best-selling self-help book that transformed her own survival story into a lifeline for others. Today, Elizabeth Berkley is 53 years old in 2025. She continues acting, though selectively, while devoting much of her life to family, advocacy, and helping young performers avoid the heartbreak she endured. Sofia Milos as Yelena Salas. Sofia Milos, born on September 27, 1969, in Zurich, Switzerland. She was 33 years old when she joined CSI, Miami as Yelena Salas, the poised, intuitive detective whose silent strength and layered emotions added a rare softness to the show's intensity. During her early years on the show, Milos was celebrated for her beauty almost as much as for her talent, a double-edged sword that would later cut into her career. Hollywood quickly packaged her as the exotic, seductive woman, a label that followed her from casting room to casting room. While CSI, Miami gave her visibility, it also locked her into a narrow lane that left little room to grow. Offers slowed, auditions dwindled, and the momentum she once enjoyed evaporated with startling speed. The sudden quiet was devastating. For a woman who had fought hard to be taken seriously, the realization that she was valued more for her appearance than her craft struck deeply. Friends later recalled how the shift affected her spirit. The long days waiting for calls that never came, the creeping sense of invisibility, the fear that her career had peaked too soon. Milos, always composed in public, wrestled privately with bouts of mild depression, questioning whether she had ever truly belonged in an industry that praised her beauty while denying her complexity. Yet she refused to collapse under the disappointment. Instead, she sought roles abroad, returned to European television, and leaned into creative freedom outside Hollywood's narrow expectations. She embraced philanthropy and spiritual practices, rebuilding her sense of worth from the inside rather than from casting decisions. As of 2025, Sofia Milos is 55 years old. She works selectively in international productions and dedicates much of her time to wellness, charity, and personal development. Eva LaRue as Natalia Boa Vista. Eva LaRue was born on December 27, 1966 in Long Beach, California. She was 39 years old when she entered CSI Miami as Natalia Boa Vista, a woman defined by intelligence, grace, and a quiet determination that often masked deeper wounds. On screen, Natalia carried emotional shadows. Her personal life unfolded like a series of battles she never asked to fight. LaRue married 3 times, each union beginning in hope and ending in heartbreak. Her marriage to actor John Callahan brought her daughter Kaya, the center of her world, but their divorce led to a long, painful custody struggle. Courtrooms replaced comfort, legal documents replaced peace, and every decision felt like choosing between her career and her child. Even as she filmed some of her strongest work on CSI Miami, she was often returning home to tears, negotiations, and sleepless nights. Then came a nightmare no parent should ever endure. Beginning in March 2007, LaRue and her young daughter were stalked relentlessly by a man who sent letters signed Freddy Krueger. His messages were not just disturbing, they were explicit threats of rape and murder. For 12 years, Eva lived in a state of hypervigilance, checking windows, memorizing escape routes, and teaching her daughter how to stay safe in ways no child should have to learn. Each new letter deepened the terror. Each passing year sharpened the fear that he might eventually act. She later admitted that waking up each day not knowing where he was felt like living inside a horror film with no end. In 2019, everything changed. Through genetic genealogy, the same method used in cold case breakthroughs, the FBI identified the stalker as James David Rogers of Heath, Ohio. His arrest and subsequent 40-month federal prison sentence finally ended the ordeal, but the psychological scars remained. And just as she began to breathe again, tragedy struck. Her beloved sister, Nika, lost her battle with breast cancer that same year. She had been Eva's artistic partner, closest confidant, and the emotional anchor who helped her survive the worst moments. Losing her shattered something inside LaRue that work could not mend. The years that followed became a slow rebuilding. She stepped back from the relentless grind of Hollywood, choosing roles that supported her healing rather than drained it. She poured herself into motherhood, advocacy, and the quiet pursuit of stability, a luxury she had been denied for so long. Today, in 2025, Eva LaRue is 58 years old. She continues acting selectively, savoring a life shaped not by fear, but by resilience. Khandi Alexander as Alex Woods. Born on September 4, 1957, in Jacksonville, Florida, Khandi Alexander was 45 years old when she stepped into the role of Alex Woods, the gentle, soulful medical examiner whose compassion softened even the darkest crime scenes. Alex spoke to bodies with kindness, whispered apologies to the dead, and carried the emotional weight of the show in a way no one else could. From the very beginning, Alexander felt the industry boxing her in. Her tenderness on screen, her warmth, her expressive eyes, all of it made executives see her as the comforting mother, the woman who exists only to soothe, never to lead. As CSI, Miami soared in popularity. That image hardened. Casting directors stopped seeing her range. She once admitted privately that she feared Alex Woods had swallowed her whole, that she had become typecast in a role that gave her love but stole her artistic freedom. By the mid-2000s, the tension became unbearable. Long hours, emotional exhaustion, and the suffocating feeling of creative confinement pushed her to a breaking point. Her departure from CSI Miami was sudden, shocking even loyal viewers. But behind the scenes, it was an escape. But leaving came with its own heartbreak. For years, she drifted in and out of small guest roles, often unsure whether the industry had already decided it no longer needed her. The quiet stretch of unemployment was more than financial insecurity. It was a mental and emotional unraveling. For a performer who once danced beside Whitney Houston and toured the world as a choreographer, being reduced to silence was a wound that lingered. Slowly, Alexander began to rebuild herself, piece by piece, role by role. Trem gave her a pulse again. Scandal reminded audiences of her power, and The Corner had already proven she was capable of brilliance far beyond stereotypes. Each comeback was not a comeback at all, but a reclaiming, a reminder that she had never lost her talent, only the industry's permission to show it. By 2025, Khandi Alexander is 67 years old. She works on her own terms, choosing projects that honor her range and refusing anything that shrinks her spirit. Adam Rodriguez as Eric Delco. Adam Rodriguez, born on April 2, 1975, in Yonkers, New York. He was 27 years old when he joined CSI Miami as Eric Delco, the magnetic, soft-spoken investigator whose loyalty and vulnerability made him one of the show's emotional pillars. Delco was handsome, heroic, and endlessly reliable on screen. Off-screen, Rodriguez's path was far more uneven. After CSI, Miami skyrocketed him to fame. The world expected Rodriguez to transition effortlessly into leading man territory. When the series ended in 2012, the momentum he built for a decade evaporated almost overnight. He took scattered appearances on shows like The Goodwin Games and Ugly Betty, but nothing matched the visibility he once enjoyed. Casting directors struggled to see him as anything other than Delco, the blessing that made his name now quietly becoming a cage around it. The silence between projects grew longer, the auditions more uncertain, and the fear of slipping into obscurity crept in like an unwelcome companion. Determined not to wait for Hollywood's permission, Rodriguez turned to directing, a dream he'd carried for years. But independent filmmaking is a battlefield of its own. He poured personal savings into passion projects, took out loans, and learned firsthand that creative freedom comes with brutal financial risk. Productions stalled, budgets overshot, and distributors pulled back. Behind his calm public demeanor, he wrestled with anxiety about providing for his family while trying to reinvent himself in a field that rewards few and bankrupts many. Friends later shared that this period hardened him, not with bitterness, but with a deeper understanding of how quickly the industry could lift a career and just as quickly abandon it. Even so, Rodriguez refused to disappear. Bit by bit, he rebuilt his presence with recurring roles in Criminal Minds, Empire, and Jane the Virgin, each performance carrying the depth of someone who had fought to stay relevant. He eventually returned to more stable ground, balancing acting with directing episodes of television, proving to himself and to the industry that resilience could be just as defining as talent. Today, in 2025, Adam Rodriguez is 50 years old. He continues to act steadily, direct selectively, and raise his family with the hard-earned wisdom of a man who survived both fame and its aftermath. Omar Benson Miller as Walter Simmons. Omar Benson Miller was born on October 7, 1978, in Anaheim, California. He was 31 years old when he joined CSI, Miami, as Walter Simmons, the upbeat, big-hearted investigator whose humor brought warmth to some of the show's darkest cases. With his easy charm and gentle presence, Miller quickly became a fan favorite. As his career gained momentum, Miller began struggling with rapid, uncontrollable weight gain, a change that crept into his life quietly and then refused to leave. The pressure was immediate and cruel. Casting directors, who once saw him as versatile and energetic, started reducing him to a single question: can he play the part physically? Roles slipped away, opportunities shrank, and the industry's silent judgment weighed heavier than any number on a scale. The physical transformation triggered something deeper, a growing self-consciousness that shadowed every audition and every mirror he passed. He battled fatigue, fluctuating health, and an unease that followed him into his personal life. Miller pushed through with roles in The Unicorn, Ballers, and 8 Mile, determined not to let Hollywood decide his worth. But behind each victory was the quiet exhaustion of a man balancing ambition with the constant need to monitor his health, pace his energy, and carry the emotional toll of public scrutiny. For years, he cycled through diets, doctors, and lifestyle changes in an effort to reclaim stability, not for appearance, but for survival. By the early 2020s, Miller had found a more balanced rhythm. He learned to prioritize his well-being, protect his peace, and accept roles that honored his talent rather than punish his physicality. Now in 2025, Omar Benson Miller is 47 years old. He continues acting in selected television projects, maintaining a quiet, steady presence in the industry. Clemenson as Tom Lohman. Born on March 17, 1958, in Humboldt, Iowa, Clemenson was 51 years old when he joined CSI Miami as Tom Lohman, the brilliant yet socially awkward medical examiner whose quiet quirks and razor-sharp intellect made him one of the show's most distinctive late-season additions. Long before CSI Miami, Clemenson had tasted the heights of prestige. He won an Emmy for Boston Legal, earning industry respect for his ability to transform into deeply human, emotionally layered characters. But as the years went on, the roles grew fewer, the opportunities narrower. And just as his career began to lose momentum, his health began to unravel. Clemenson developed chronic, debilitating medical issues, conditions that drained his energy, limited his mobility, and made the exhausting demands of film production nearly impossible to meet. What was once a steady climb turned into a painful, invisible descent. Clemenson, once a familiar face, began fading into an absence most viewers didn't even notice happening. By the late 2000s, he was working only sporadically, a small role here, a guest appearance there, each one carried by determination rather than ease. Today, Clemenson is 67 years old in 2025. He lives privately, focusing on his health, and taking the occasional modest role when his strength permits. Lisa Sheridan as Kathleen Newberry. Lisa Sheridan, born on December 5, 1974, in Macon, Georgia. She was 33 years old when she appeared in the CSI franchise, including CSI Miami, as Kathleen Newberry, delivering performances marked by vulnerability, intelligence, and the quiet intensity that became her signature. For years, Sheridan navigated a career filled with promise but shadowed by heartbreak. She landed recurring roles on Invasion, Halt and Catch Fire, and The Mentalist. Yet Hollywood never gave her the breakthrough she deserved. The constant cycle of near successes followed by sudden stagnation weighed heavily on her. The pressure, the unpredictable income, the loneliness between roles, all of it carved deeper and deeper into her emotional reserves. In her final years, those private struggles grew sharper. After a painful breakup and a long period of artistic frustration, Sheridan's mental and physical health began to decline. She fought anxiety, bouts of depression, and the crushing sense that her career was drifting away from her. When she was found dead in her New Orleans apartment on February 25, 2019, rumors erupted instantly. Whispers of overdose, addiction, self-destruction. But the truth was far more tragic in its simplicity. The coroner's report revealed she died at just 44 years old from complications of chronic alcoholism combined with acute pneumonia. There were no illegal drugs, no foul play, only the quiet, fatal consequences of a body worn down by years of strain, sorrow, and untreated illness. In 2025, Lisa Sheridan is remembered not for scandal, but for her unfulfilled brilliance. She left behind no fortune, no blockbuster credits, only the bittersweet legacy of an actress whose life ended far too early and whose talent deserved far more time than the world ever gave her. 2 decades later, the legends of CSI Miami have changed in ways no script could predict. Which journey shocked you the most? The ones who vanished, the ones who broke, or the ones who survived? Leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe for more Hollywood secrets you never dared to reveal.